Thank you, sir, for the introductions. Yes, Bhagavad-Gita is Mahabharata, Itihasas. So the topic that I'm going to present is about Bhagavad-Gita and human resource development. So my field of expertise in human resource development, because I teach human resource development, but I consider myself as a student of Bhagavad-Gita. So let me go direct into the abstract of this presentation. So in this presentation, I'm going to attempt to make the relevance of the Bhagavad Gita to the psychology of human resource development. And this contributes to indigenous theories of HRD based on culture-specific HRD theories. This is done through a hermeneutical analysis, a qualitative approach, which involves study, understanding, and interpretation of ancient texts. Now, in a nutshell, I can say that the Bhagavad Gita presents HRD from inside out. Some of the HRD is outside in. So the Bhagavad Gita begins with self-realization leading to self-development, human development, and also organizational development in total if you're looking from the management perspective. And this is expected to provide a base for comparative HRD philosophy in the East and also the West. So before I go into the Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to give you an overview of HRD. Of course, I'm not going to read through the slide here, but just giving you an overview. HRD is an interdisciplinary field with contribution coming from various other fields such as psychology, social psychology, anthropology, political science, even fields like economics, even philosophy. And it involves areas such as training, development, and education of employees in organizations to improve their competency towards performance. And if you look at literature, there are hundreds of ways how HRD has been defined by various scholars, both in the East and also the West. And the theories related to HRD, theories and concept of HRD from the West have been dominating the world during the last century, mainly due to largely available resources in English language. If for an HRD to be effective, according to researchers like Sharma in 2001, argues that it has to be rooted in a cultural soil of the country where it is practiced. So in the East, if you look into whether you're looking into India from the Puranas, Itihasas, and all, there are many concepts relating to development, human development, self-development that has been written long ago. In fact, in the field of HRD, many communities in the world are also trying to find or discover their own system of HRD. Maruyama used to be the first to write about management context, which includes HRD from Japanese perspective. And then there are many other perspectives, many other schools of thought, the Islamic and then the Chinese school of thought, Confucianism, Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, Art of War, and also in the Indian context from the Vedic literature, from the Vedanta philosophy, there have been many scholars, many who have written, and then there are a growing number of authors who are doing in this field. So now we move into the Bhagavad Gita. So introduction to Bhagavad Gita, I'm not going to go through in that, okay, but you have to remember that it is Mahabharata, part of Mahabharata. You cannot separate the Bhagavad Gita from the Mahabharata. In fact, anyone who wants to read the Bhagavad Gita, they need to understand the context of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Mahabharata. And Mahabharata, as many of you know, is the longest epic in the world. And it is considered to be the fifth Veda, Bharado Pantamo Veda. And Bhagavad Gita is less than 0.1% of the Mahabharata. And of course, you know, it is part of Bhishma Parva and it consists of 18 chapters. Not going to go into the details. Now, Bhagavad Gita narrates the situation in a battlefield, and Mahabharata in total narrates the war between the two cousins, Pandavas and Kauravas, to claim the kingdom of Hastinapura. And the Gita was delivered before the commencement of the war in Kurukshetra. And some philosophers looks at Kurukshetra within the human body. The body within the human body, human development. We are looking into human development. We are looking into the human perspective, human body, where the two forces between the good and evil, the war is taking place at every moment. Now, when we look at the Bhagavad Gita, we have to look into the context or perspective of human development or human resource development. We are moving from the physical development to intellectual development, emotional development, and to spiritual development. Of course, in the literature of HR, in the literature in the field of management, spiritual intelligence, there are studies being done, but it is not in that. Okay, of course, there are studies being done in this area: IQ, intellectual quotient, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, which I will also talk to you a little bit on that. But the concept of the HRD from the Bhagavad Gita focus more on the self from the spiritual or self-realization perspective, which is not much covered in most of the literatures, if you look into, especially in the Western literature or even other schools of thought. The Bhagavad Gita presents to you the HRD approach taken by Sri Krishna, the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. Karma Yoga, looking from the duty and action-based approach. Bhakti Yoga, the affective and emotional-based approach. Then, of course, you have Jnana Yoga, the cognitive and the knowledge approach. The three approach that has been taken. Now, there are many theories or concepts that can be derived from the Bhagavad Gita that will be able to contribute to the field of human development or human resource development. There are many. Of course, due to the time, I'm not going to go through details, all the detail. Now you have concepts like Nishkama Karma, action without desire, Sita Prajnan, all that. In this presentation, I think I'm going to focus only chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1 and 2 related to the Arjuna Vishada Yoga and also the Yoga of Knowledge. Now, the first chapter, if you look at the situation, now maybe in this context, you look at Krishna taking the role as a HRD role, human resource developer. You know, everyone knows who has read the Gita. Chapter 1 is all about Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Arjuna was giving all the excuses why he should not fight the war. In fact, he was well prepared. Physically, he was well prepared. He received all the education from his teacher and he received many astras, including Pasupadastra from Lord Shiva. But yet, why at that particular moment, when he saw his relatives, his friends on the opposite side, his grandfather, his teacher, he became demotivated. And you see in chapter 2, he is saying that after giving excuses, even Krishna saying that why does this impurity come upon you? Uttashtua kashmalamidam vishame shamupashitam. Why does this impurity come upon you? He's still arguing that how can I kill Bhishma and Drona? Katam Bhishma maham samke dronam ta madhusudana itsube pratyochami pudahavarishudana. So the role Krishna is playing here is the HRD role to revive his motivation, to energize him, to enable him. So what did Krishna did that can be useful to our HRD? HRD, there are many sub areas within HRD. You can include counseling, You can include coaching, you can include mentoring, you can include training, so many sub areas. So before you solve a particular problem, you need to understand what is the problem. And some of you are familiar with Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the habit number 5, is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And most of the time, many people don't listen to understand. They just listen with the intent to reply. They actually can go deeper into this component. What does it really mean? In this context, you look into Arjuna had a negative, what they call, view about the self, negative emotion, anger, guilt, sorrow, anxiety, leading to a state of inaction. After he saw all his kith and kin on the other side, what did he do? He dropped his weapon. He dropped his weapon. He surrendered to Krishna. In fact, if you look into entire chapter 1, it's all about his dilemma, to fight or not to fight. So if you really look at this, the first battle is in your mind. The HRD focus is more on competency, attitude development, knowledge development, of knowledge, skill development. But most of the time, they don't go in deep, going into the deeper component of what factors, deeper and deeper, that contributes to the performance. So Arjuna, in this case, he had a lot of self-defeating belief. So if you're looking at chapter 1, it's mostly telling us, or for the HRD specialists, to help the people to eliminate the negative mindset and to enhance it with a positive mindset. So it is about the thoughts, starting with the thoughts that will have an impact on the belief, the feeling, and also action. So you have this is actually, if you look into Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, you are what your deep desire, driving desire is. As your desire is your will, as your will is your deed, and as your deed is your destiny. Chapter 2 is about training people to be self-aware. First stage in people development is helping them to be aware of their self. And this is also the first component of emotional intelligence. The HRD developer has a role to help people to develop high level of self-awareness. Many times in the training that is conducted, the focus in self-awareness, self-development is less. Most practical, they move directly into the job-related training skills, self-awareness. The other part is that educate people to be undisturbed, Adira, to manage change and not to be deluded by change. Change happens. Change is taking place. Every one of us affected by change. COVID-19 has resulted in a lot of change, but we should not be undisturbed. So the self-awareness component, there is a model of emotional intelligence by Daniel Coleman, who talks about first quadrant of emotional intelligence. And what is the first quadrant of emotional intelligence? It is the self-awareness. But this self-awareness, we can go deeper into analyzing a person, an individual, how the individual evolves. Bhagavad-Gita provides that. For example, if you look at in chapter 2, verse 11, Krishna starts his teaching. He says, Asoshan anvasoshastva prajnavadam shabashase gatasu nagatasunscha nanu soshanti pandita. You are talking like a learned scholar, but you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. If you are a pandita is someone who will not worry for one who has gone or one who has yet to go. And another
Balakrishnan, are we moving towards the end of the paper?
It's not end of the paper, but if you want me to end now, I can end it now.
No. How far are we?
Another few more, I can go in few more. All right.
Okay. No. So
you want me to go express? I can go express.
We know you have a lot to
very quickly.
But please,
okay? If you want me to go,
wind it up.
All right, I go very quickly.
We have the other speaker present.
All right, then what I will do, I'll stop after a few slides due to the time factor. Of course, the change, transmigration, transformation, you find in 2.13, Dejino Shmim Yatha Deji Kaumaram Yavanam Tara Tatha Dehantara Papir Dirashtatra Nahoyati, undisturbed persons. How do we train people to be undisturbed? And the concept of self is explored in detail in the Bhagavad-Gita. But of course, due to the time, I'm not going to go through. Another concept I'm taking from an Upanishad, Katha Upanishad, which talks about human development, taking the body as a chariot with 5 houses. Over here, we have 6, including the brain here, 5 senses. I'm sure the Pancha Indriyas, the 5 Indriyas, what are there? You see here, the rein is a driving instrument. The driver is your buddhi, intellect. And the self is a passenger, real self is a passenger. Okay. Bhagavad-Gita also talks about stability, equanimity of the mind. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Equanimity of the mind is yoga. But training people to practice equanimity is not possible. It's not something that is easy, but it is possible. You find later on in the 6th chapter, it says, Arjuna will says, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavatritam ashyaham nigraham manye vayu reva shudoshram. Difficult to control my mind. But Krishna will say, yes, it is possible through constant practice and detachment. Abhyashina to kaunteya vairagina cha grihayate. Abhyashina to practice, constant practice. Training people to practice, to learn. There's a lot of techniques are there to train people in developing equanimity of the mind. Okay, equanimity, more about equanimity, chapter what do you call 2 is also there. The concept of Sita Prajnan is there in chapter 2, verse 55. And then this is about self-management, managing the emotional part. There are many types of emotion. One of the emotion here is mentioned is the anger. So very important about anger. Anger, if it is not managed, not controlled, but managed, what happens? Results bewilderment of memory. And if your memory is bewildered, intelligence will be lost. And if the intelligence is lost, you are going to fall down. Rodat bhavanti shamohat, shamohat smriti vibramha, smriti brahmchat buddhinaso, buddhinashat pranashyate. And another one, looking at the conquers of the self.
Can you quickly move through all the slides?
Okay, I think instead of moving, I will conclude. Okay.
Yes, Arishad Vargas. So
all right, conclusion. After hearing the 575 verses, Arjuna was energized. He was transformed. This is human resource development as done by Krishna to Arjuna. All right, thank you. I think I'll conclude here since the time is limited.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.